Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, addressing the nation on this anniversary of Liberation Day, President Park Geun-hye proposes the two Koreas hold a reunion next month for families separated by the Korean War. She calls on Japanese leaders to take a sincere approach to their country's past atrocities. The two Koreas agreed to reopen the joint Gaeseong Industrial Complex after more than 4 months of suspension. They agreed there must not be another shutdown and the business park should be open to international investors. Plus, close to 300 people were killed Wednesday as the Egyptian interim government used military force to break up the month-long protests by supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsy. A state of emergency has been declared. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yu-sun here in Seoul.
Good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. With this Thursday marking the 68th Liberation Day here in Korea, President Park Geun-hye has called on the Japanese government to take responsible steps to compensate for its past wrongdoings so the two countries can further develop their relationship.
Stressing the way to move forward in inter-Korean relations, she also suggested the two Koreas arrange a reunion for families separated by the Korean War around the time of Chuseok, or Korean Thanksgiving, next month. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju reports.
President Park urged Tokyo to show courageous leadership in healing the wounds Japan left behind in the hearts of Koreans during its colonial rule from 1910 to 1945. Speaking at a ceremony commemorating the 68th Liberation Day on Thursday, President Park made it clear that it would be difficult to build trust between the two countries if Japan doesn't have the courage to face its past wrongdoings and the heart to care for the pain of others.
특히 과거 역사에서 비롯된 고통과 상처를 지금도 안고 살아가고 계신 분들에 대해 아픔을 치유할 수 있도록 책임 있고 성의 있는 조치를 기대합니다.
The president pledged to set up a foundation for the reunification of the two Koreas, as true liberation will only be fulfilled when there is peace on the peninsula and when the South and the North eventually become one. She once again called on Pyongyang to change and abandon its nuclear program to become a responsible member of the international community. And with regard to the agreement the two Koreas reached on the normalization of the Gaeseong Industrial Complex, she said,
저는 이번 합의를 계기로 과거 남북 관계의 잘못된 관행을 바로잡고 상생의 새로운 남북 관계가 시작되기를 바람하지 않습니다.
President Park has officially proposed to Pyongyang that the two countries hold a reunion for families separated by the Korean War sometime around Chuseok, a major Korean national holiday, which falls on September 18 through the 20th. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
Elsewhere in the nation, a variety of events are taking place to celebrate Liberation Day. Following the nation's official ceremony in Seoul, a special bell-ringing ceremony was held at Boshingak in central Seoul at noon. Down in the central city of Cheonan at the Independence Hall of Korea, a national anthem flash mob performance will be staged. And at the easternmost Dokdo Islets, a special taekwondo performance will take place. Overseas Korean communities in 6 cities in 4 countries, including the U.S., Mexico, and Russia, will also celebrate this day. Some members of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet visited the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine earlier on this Thursday. Chairman of Japan's National Public Safety Commission, Furuya Keiji, and Internal Affairs and Communication Minister Yoshitaka Shindo have already paid a visit, and around 50 other lawmakers are expected to make their way to the shrine later before the end of the day. The Yasukuni Shrine honors Japan's war dead, including around a dozen Class A war criminals, and repeated visits to the shrine by Japanese leaders have angered Korea and China, which suffered Japan's invasion before and during World War II. A group of opposition lawmakers from Korea made an attempt to enter the Yasukuni Thursday in protest, but they were denied entrance. After their attempt failed, the lawmakers issued a statement condemning the denied entry. It's not only Korea that is at odds with Japan when it comes to historical issues. China's relationship with Japan is going through one of its rockiest times since the countries normalized diplomatic ties in 1972. Our Sun Jung-in explains why.
The relations between Beijing and Tokyo have been deteriorating ever since the row over the disputed islands, called the Diaoyu Islands by China and the Senkaku Islands by Japan, has escalated. Furthermore, early this month, Japan unveiled its 20,000-ton vessel Izumo, the largest Japanese military ship produced since World War II. Chinese media responded angrily to the launching of the new destroyer, which coincidentally has the same name with the Japanese cruiser that led a war operation against Shanghai in 1937, leaving more than 200,000 Chinese dead. The conflict is unlikely to subside as long as Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and his cabinet members throw their support behind paying respects to honor the nation's war dead, including war criminals, a symbol of Japan's past militarism. Experts say the relations between the two countries are at its worst since the China-Japan Peace and Friendship Treaty was signed in 1978.
China and Japan both know the Diaoyu territorial dispute is a matter of national awareness, so there is a little chance it will see improvements anytime soon.
According to a recent public opinion poll conducted jointly by Japan and China, more than 90% of those surveyed in each country said they had a bad impression of the other. August 12th marked the 35th anniversary of the signing of the bilateral treaty, and although the day was supposed to be a milestone in the development of peaceful relations, neither government held a commemorative event. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
A popular Japanese band has released a single that criticizes the Japanese government for its improper education of modern history. Despite holding a political message, the song serves as a wish for peace around the world. Our Kim Min-ji gives us a sneak peek of the single.
Japanese rock band Southern All-Stars, or also known as Sajan, have released a single that criticizes Tokyo for its improper education on modern history. Let's take a look at the music video, Peace to Highlight. Released last month, the song illustrates the current situation in East Asia and portrays Japan heightening tensions with neighboring countries. The lyrics criticize the Japanese government, saying it does not teach modern history properly and points out the shortcomings in Japanese education. The song opens by saying people's opinions do not change even through dialogue and calls for cooperation by understanding each other's historical differences. During the music video, actors wearing the masks of Korean President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe argue, while people in the masks of U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping fight. The clip later shows the leaders reconcile with one another by understanding their differences in history and deciding to cooperate. Despite containing a political message, Peace to Highlight has become a hit in Japan, reaching #1 on the Oricon chart. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
In light of Liberation Day, there are newly revealed remnants of Japan's 35-year colonial rule here in Korea. Some of the rocks that were used to cut off the energy of the Korean people are now on public display for the first time. Our Connie Lee went to check them out.
Nestled between Korea's great mountains is one small town in southern Korea. It's here in Nochi village, in the city of Namwon, where these mokdol, or carved rocks, have been revealed to the public. They were used to kill the spirit of the Korean people in the early 20th century.
They resemble harnesses that are put on cows to stop them from moving.
Measuring about 150 centimeters long and about 70 centimeters wide, the rocks are now in the hands of the Namwon Cultural Council, but they were once strategically placed into the ground in a bank about 4 meters deep. Based on the Korean Pungsujiri belief, a strong natural source of energy flows down from the mountains and empowers the nation. Historians say the Japanese recognized this belief and did what they could to cut the flow off.
The very superstitious Japanese recognized this source of energy, so in an attempt to stop and discourage the Korean people's independent spirit, it is a recorded fact that they inserted various objects into the mountains all across Korea.
In that same sense, these rocks were embedded near the bottom of the Baekdu-daegan, or the largest mountain range in Korea, commonly known as the backbone of the nation. The rocks were actually excavated 15 years ago, but they remained in a private garden until now.
It's right here. 6 of the mokdol were implanted here in a deep bank. From here until over there. Cranes were able to get 5 of the rocks out, but one was too big to get out.
It's a sea of rice paddies now, but officials expect to pull out the last remaining mokdol by the end of this year. But dating back to the 1900s, these villagers vividly remember the days under Japanese rule, as well as the day the rocks were first implanted.
I was young. I didn't know why they were implanted, but I remember when they first appeared. All the kids played over and under those rocks in the bank.
Town officials are now working to get these mokdol get national recognition as a cultural heritage asset. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
One of the noteworthy agreements reached at Wednesday's inter-Korean talks on the Gaeseong Industrial Complex was the formation of a joint committee. Both Koreas are hopeful the committee will serve as a key element for the normalization of their joint factory zone. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Forming a joint committee to oversee the management of the Gaeseong Industrial Complex was one of the agreements reached between the two Koreas at Wednesday's 7th round of working-level talks. Once established, government officials from both sides will be able to discuss issues related to the joint business park on a regular basis, serving as a safeguard against future closures.
South Korea and North Korea will discuss related issues with respect and for mutual benefits and build trust that will lead to a sustainable improvement in inter-Korean relations.
We'll continue our discussions on the issue of joint committee, so it will effectively contribute to the improvement and normalization of the Gaeseong Industrial Complex.
The committee will also discuss how the North plans to compensate South Korean companies' economic losses of around $1 billion during the 4 months of work stoppage. It will also launch joint inspections if either side violates their agreements and supplement measures to secure the safety of South Korean personnel at the border town. But some experts are skeptical about the latest agreement, saying the two Koreas' agreements to form such joint committees in the past were never realized. They say that while the agreement can be seen as a meaningful start, the effectiveness of the committee can't be guaranteed. The Koreas will soon exchange draft proposals for the formation of the joint committee and meet for working-level talks on the issue if needed. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And with this long-awaited agreement to reopen operations at the Inter-Korean Business Park came reactions from the international community. But for the South Korean resident companies, there's still much left to do. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The global community has shown positive responses to the latest development at the Inter-Korean Business Project. after Seoul and Pyongyang reached an agreement to reopen the joint Gaeseong Industrial Complex late Wednesday afternoon. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said that Washington welcomes the decision, saying that the U.S. supports inter-Korean relations and welcomes news that the two Koreas have agreed to restart operations at the business park. UN Secretary General Park Geun-hye also threw in his support behind the decision and said the joint business park has been a successful tool to enhance diplomatic relations between both Koreas and hopes that the factories operate normally without being halted again. Meanwhile, South Korean businesses in Gaeseong were thrilled to hear the good news. The 133 days has felt like a wait of a lifetime for many, as no results have materialized over the past 6 rounds of talks. Major repairs are needed at many other facilities since maintenance of the factories had not been possible. But the hardest task will be to bring back clients.
The most important aspect is bringing back all the buyers. There's only so much the businesses can do, and we believe that the South Korean government should come up with supporting measures.
The companies will open up an emergency planning committee to set up priorities and assign roles to normalize operations at the complex as soon as possible. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The parliamentary probe into the country's spy agency rumbles on. One of the key witnesses in the probe, former Seoul Police Chief Kim Yong-pan, says he will attend a parliamentary hearing scheduled for Friday. And that's according to Kim's lawyer on Wednesday. This comes after Kim, as well as former National Intelligence Service Chief Won Se-hun, failed to show up for their scheduled hearing on Wednesday. Their reasons were poor health and time conflicts, but the chairman of the Special Parliamentary Investigation Committee said they were not convincing excuses. The probe has until next Friday to look into allegations the NIS tried to sway public opinion in favor of the ruling Saenuri Party in last year's presidential election. Kim is accused of manipulating the results of a police probe into the matter.
Nearly 300 people were reportedly killed in Egypt on Wednesday on the bloodiest day in decades in the North African country. The deaths come as security forces have launched a deadly operation to disperse protest camps set up in support of deposed President Mohamed Morsy. The interim government has arrested key members of Morsy's Muslim Brotherhood and declared a state of emergency. Kim Yeon-ji has more.
Armored bulldozers moved into 2 protest camps in Cairo Wednesday morning. Egyptian security forces opened fire on thousands of supporters of deposed President Mohamed Morsy and his Muslim Brotherhood, who had been staging sit-ins in the capital. Morsy's supporters had been camped at 2 major sites in Cairo ever since he was toppled on July 3rd, saying they would carry on their demonstration until Morsy is reinstated. Egypt's health ministry said some 200 people had been killed. But the Muslim Brotherhood says more than 2,000 people died in the crackdown. Most of the dead are thought to be Morsi supporters, but members of the security forces were also among those killed. The government declared a state of emergency and imposed a curfew on Wednesday, which is expected to last for 1 month. Rights groups say the move will give the government legal cover for the army to make arrests. Egypt's interim Prime Minister Hassim el-Bablawi defended Wednesday's operation, saying it was necessary to break up protest camps and restore security. The violence in Egypt will force the country's Western allies to make some tough decisions, especially Washington, which funds Egypt's military to the tune of $1.3 billion a year. Washington has so far refused to label the army's overthrow of President Morsi a coup.
The United States strongly condemns the use of violence against protesters in Egypt. We have repeatedly called on the Egyptian military and security forces to show restraint and for the government to respect the universal rights of its citizens.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has condemned the violence in Cairo. Korea's foreign ministry has issued travel warnings for most of Egypt in light of the turmoil there. Kim Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
The first direct Israeli-Palestinian peace talks in 3 years have begun in Jerusalem and are currently being held under a media blackout. To restart the dialogue with Palestine, Israel released 26 Palestinian prisoners this week and plans to free an additional 78 over a period of 9 months, depending on the progress in the talks. The peace process aims to seek ways to put an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on the so-called two-state solution, which means a Palestinian state alongside Israel. The agenda has not been publicized, but US Secretary of State John Kerry said earlier that all final status issues will be on the table, including borders, settlements and Palestinian refugees. US Army Private Bradley Manning has told a military court that he is sorry for giving US secrets to the WikiLeaks website. In a brief 2-minute statement during the sentencing phase of his court-martial on Wednesday, Manning said he was sorry for hurting his country and for the unexpected results of his actions. The 25-year-old went on to say that his 3 years in detention had been a learning experience. Manning could face up to 90 years in prison for handing hundreds of thousands of documents, battle videos and diplomatic cables to WikiLeaks in 2010. He was found guilty of charges of espionage and theft late last month, but acquitted of the most serious charge of aiding the enemy.
Well, let's get an update on the weather on this Liberation Day with our weathercaster Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-hyun.
Hello there, guys. Well, today is the 68th National Liberation Day here in Korea. And as Yoo-sun talked about it on her newscast, the Independence Hall of Korea, which is the largest exhibition hall in the country, will hold various events from today to this Sunday to commemorate the day.
Yes, well, I believe that place is in Cheonan, which is a place I haven't actually been to. It's around about 100 kilometers south of Seoul.
Right.
I'm pretty good at my geography. But I was thinking I might like to head there one day, perhaps.
Maybe this weekend.
Yes, the weather's nice. So.
You won't have any problems making your way there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll have a great time with your family.
Definitely.
But I suspect it's going to be quite hot down there over the weekend. So why don't you give us an outlook on the weather in Cheonan and for the rest of the country?
I'd be happy to. Now, the temperature in Cheonan will hover above 30 to 32 degrees Celsius at the peak of the day, but the exhibition is inside, so enjoy the exhibition hall in the afternoon hours and enjoy the city when it starts to cool off later in the day. Now, the sizzling heat wave will continue today with a chance of outbreaks of rain in the northern parts of central region, along with thunder and lightning at times. And these showers should give us short relief from the heat here in Seoul and the surrounding areas, but not in the southern provinces. Now in Korea, we say Burning Friday, which means thank goodness it's Friday. Well, it looks like weather will surely reflect it. It's expected to be the last scorching Friday of this year because the temperature will definitely start to cool off early next week. Well, right now, the few breaks of clouds are passing by in the central provinces, getting ready to drop some showers, but it's sunshine only for the rest of the country. So with that, let's take a look at today's numbers. Now the capital and Busan will climb up to 33 degrees Celsius, that's 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, I did not put the rain symbol for Seoul because the chances are very slim, and even though it rains, it will be very spotty. Now for other regions like Daegu and Gwangju will be very hot at 37 and 35. And Jeju should be expected to hit 33, as well as Dokdo and Mount Kumgang will be topping out at 35. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. that's all for me today. Enjoy your lunch break and have a great rest of the day. Now back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thank you ever so much, as always, Jian, for the weather. And of course, it's a national holiday here in Korea, so if you get the chance, go out and enjoy the sunny, warm weather. But those are all the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us again tomorrow here in Seoul at noon, Korea time.